This podcast is not meant to be professional advice of any kind. It is meant to be informative and entertaining. If you make any changes to your life, see the appropriate professional before you do so. What kind of super ager are you? Go to ageist.com/quiz. Take the super ager quiz, and we'll send you directed, personalized information to help you super age the best that you can. Welcome to Super Age. My name's David Stewart. I am the founder of AGEIST and your host on the Super Age Show. We talk about how to live healthier, how to live longer, and how to be happier. And who doesn't want that? Today's show is brought to you by Inside Tracker, the dashboard to your inner health. Go to insidetracker.com/ageist. Save 20% on all their products. The show is also brought to you by LMNT. My favorite electrolyte mix. It's what I put in my water in the morning, and it's what I put in my water at the gym. Go to drinkelement.com/ageist and receive a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. Today's show is also brought to you by Timeline Nutrition with their breakthrough product, Mitopure, the first clinically tested urolithin A supplement, which is showing tremendous results for mitochondrial health. Go to timelinenutrition.com/ageist, use the code AGEIST at checkout, and save 10% off your first order of Mitopure. Welcome to episode 130 of the Super Age Podcast. It is so great to have you with us. This will be dropping on April the 19th, 2023. This week on the show, I'm very happy to welcome Bryan Johnson. And Bryan is doing a protocol called Blueprint, and we will leave the link to this in the show notes because you're going to want to see it. We've had a lot of people on the show who are science and medical experts. Bryan is the first person we've had on the show who is sort of his own science and medical experiment. Experiment's really too strong of a word. So what Bryan has done is he has abdicated really all of his health, wellness, and fitness to science. He has a team of scientists, and everything that he eats, everything that he does, his sleep, all of his health protocols are driven by science. And, Bryan will tell you, he's an extreme guy. He's a very extreme guy. But it's really interesting to see how far one can go with this and the sort of results that he's gotten. So he has the world's record for the greatest reduction in epigenetic aging, that's your biological age, in the shortest amount of time. And to do that, it's quite a project. So he's using himself to see how far can a human optimize themselves using the latest technology and science. Really, really fascinating guy. So really excited to have him on the show today. But back here in Park City, Utah, where the ice age seems to have abated and spring is here, there are little animals scurrying around on the ground and there are birds. It's so nice to hear birds again. And I'm back in the gym. And I haven't really done much gym work this winter because I've been doing the ski racing thing, but now I'm back. So I'm there now, not as much as I was last year, maybe 3 or 4 days a week. And I'm back doing Joel Jamieson's 8 Weeks Out program, which I had tremendous success with last year. But I'm going to make some changes this year. And one of the things I learned from my ski racing thing is that when you're skiing, especially at fairly high level, your feet, you need to articulate your feet. Like the ski boot doesn't really lock your foot, as you may think. There's a lot of articulation and sensing that goes on at the bottom of your foot. And if you're like me and you spend a lot of time in, a Nike type shoe, there's a lot of cushioning there, which actually causes the bottom of your foot to sort of like go to sleep. And like I don't really use my toes in the way that maybe I would have if I spent a lot of time barefoot or otherwise. So this year, I'm going to reduce the time with my spin bike. I have a Schwinn IC4 spin bike, best thing I ever bought. Excellent piece of exercise equipment, great cardiovascular outlook, but it doesn't really use my toes. So what I'm going to do this year is I've been experimenting with other things, pulling a sled, pushing a sled, going uphill, carrying heavy weight, things where I can really concentrate and feel my feet on the ground. And I got myself some These are like barefoot walking shoes. They're basically shoes that are entirely flat and they have a really wide toe box so my toes can articulate. And that's been really interesting. Who knew there was like foot thinness, but there is. So that's sort of what we're working on here. And what's really nice, I think you guys be interested in, is that my fitness level, although it fell off quite a bit during the winter, I've been back, a little while now. And it's like there's a sort of a muscular memory. Everything snapped back much quicker than I thought it would. So I'm happy about that. The first sponsor of today's show is Timeline Nutrition with their breakthrough product, Mitopure. We all know how important mitochondrial energy is, and especially maintaining muscle and strength as we age. Urolithin A, which is found in Mitopure, has been clinically proven to increase muscle strength and endurance with no other changes in lifestyle. Urolithin A is essentially upgrading your body's cellular power grid, giving your body the energy it needs to optimize. I've been using Mitopure for a few months now, and what I can tell you is there is a noticeable change in the way my muscles re-energize after I use them. What that means is, say I'm involved in some intense activity in the gym or maybe some sporting activity. Normally, the next time I did it, I would be, kind of tired. I would be sort of gassed out. That doesn't seem to happen with this. And all I can imagine is because my mitochondrial grid has essentially been upgraded, it's not just my muscles that are getting upgraded, it's all the other cells in my body because they're all powered by mitochondria. Go to timelinenutrition.com/AGEIST, use the code AGEIST at checkout, and save 10% off your first order of Mitopure. The second sponsor of today's show is LMNT, spelled LMNT. LMNT is an electrolyte drink that contains the exact ratios of the electrolytes sodium, magnesium, and potassium to optimize our cellular functioning for mental and physical performance. Most of us understand that, we need to stay hydrated. But what a lot of people don't realize is just pounding water isn't going to cut it. In order for our cells to function properly, they need sodium, potassium, and magnesium in the right doses. LMNT has perfected the balance. Now, of course, people with prehypertension or hypertension need to be careful about their sodium intake. But for most of us who are mindful about eating clean, unprocessed food most of the time, we may not be getting enough sodium, potassium, or magnesium. That's why I drink a packet of LMNT each day. If you'd like to try LMNT, go to drinklmnt.com/AGEIST, that's DRINKLMNT.com/AGEIST, and receive a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. Let me know what your favorite flavor is. I'm into citrus salt. What's yours? We're going to get with the incredible, fascinating Bryan Johnson in just a moment, but I want to remind people that after my conversation with Bryan, we have that moment in the show, which is called Just Try This. And we're going to give you a little tip, a little fortune cookie to help you live a little happier, a little longer. And we're going to get to that right after we speak with Bryan. Hey, Bryan.
Hi, David.
So let me start with, what is your chronological age?
I left my mother's womb 45 years ago.
And what is your epigenetic biological age?
Well, I guess it depends on which epigenetic clock you're referring to. We've done multiple clocks and
sure.
We've also done the Deneuve Pace speed of aging DNA methylation clock. Yeah.
Yes.
So my latest result on that was 0.69 for my speed of aging.
Speed of aging is 0.69. And do you have a favorite clock that you like to look at for, just like what's the biological age, or do you take a composite of them?
On the epigenetic clocks, we did a 6 clock average.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the speed of aging, we do a 3 test mean spanning 6 months.
Mm-hmm. And what was the average of all those clocks that you put together?
The 6 epigenetic clocks, I had a 5.1 year age reversal in 7 months doing Blueprint. And then for the DNA methylation, I reduced my speed of aging by the equivalent of 31 years. So my speed of age accumulation is now slower than the average 10-year-old.
And my understanding was that previous to Blueprint, things weren't going so well.
That's right. That's a good way of saying it.
So give me a sense of the before picture.
I guess I got into a life of well-being that was based upon, I had 3 little babies. I was a founder, CEO, building various companies, working through a challenging relationship and trying to sort myself through a religion that I've been born into. So basically just trying to sort through the difficulties of life that we all encounter. And then on top of that, I think I subconsciously bought into this idea that founders run themselves ragged and do heroic feats like go several days without sleep, willing to grind themselves into the ground, all in this effort of this mythological status, of a founder CEO heroic effort, which now looking back is quite silly to me that I bought into that. And yeah, I think, I did that while building my various companies, and I did a lot of damage to myself.
Okay, so give me a biological sense. Give me some markers here. What did the damage look like in you before you started Blueprint?
I mean, I've been tracking various biomarkers for the past 20 years. So I have some data on basic blood panels, which is interesting. So for example, if I look back several years, at one point, my C-reactive protein was something like, my inflammation was something like 19. And optimal range, I believe, is less than 4. And now I measure, it's almost, unless I use high sensitivity, my inflammation levels can't be identified. So so that is a marker of cortisol levels. I can go back and look at data and see that they were spiked. Cholesterol, like all the basic ones. Sadly, we don't have epigenetic markers that going back that time duration. But, I was also 60 pounds overweight. My BMI was high. My athletic performance was not great. My body mobility was not great. So just on all the metrics that we would reference, I was not doing well.
It doesn't sound like that. Any one of those would alarm me.
Mm-hmm.
So you developed Project Blueprint, and I have a little bit of experience of that from, I think, an earlier version of it. There's a super detailed, granular version of it on your site, which we will put in the show notes. And I encourage everyone to go there and see exactly what this is. What I'm curious about is your protocol. It's intense, but I'm sure that there were reasons that you made certain decisions. So how was it that you came about deciding, what goes into a green giant smoothie? Like, did you try different things, and how did you try them? How are you testing these things?
Mm-hmm. The foundational question that I wanted to explore was, if we were to pose this question and say, what does technology look like in 20 years from now? You and I would probably say better. And if we were pressed to say how better, we would make some ideas that we'd have more processing capacity, more compute, and we'd imagine certain things, but we would have unquestioned assumptions that our technology is going to continually get better. If you and I say, what do you and I look like in 20 years from now? Or what do humans look like 20 years from now? We would start with the assumption that you and I are probably on a decay curve, and we're trying to slow that decay curve or somehow, but we're basically working on an inevitability of decay, and we're trying to figure out how to slow that as much as possible. And I wondered, would it be possible for you and I to have an imagination of ourselves if we said, okay, David, what are you and I in 20 years? What if we could assume better instead of inevitable decay? How would that change the way we approach life, work with each other, deal with each other? What effect would it have on humanity? And that's what Blueprint was trying to do. And so to answer that question, I posed the contemplation, what if I could attach my body, myself, to the system of technological and scientific progress in the domain of wellness? And so that started with, what if I could measure every organ of the body? we could get readouts of the data. So the heart could report, you could pose the question, hey, heart, how are you doing? Like, tell me how you're doing with all these different measurements, and hey, liver, and hey, kidney. And then we take that data, we look at the best scientific evidence we can identify, and then we make a hypothesis and say, okay, this is what we think a clinical grade protocol would look like to best care for the heart and the kidney and the liver and so on. And then we implement that. And my responsibility is perfect discipline, and which is basically, I have removed my mind as having decision authority over me. And then you just repeat this process from measurement to scientific evidence to protocol creation, implementation, and do it again and again and again. And to basically explore, could I build an algorithm that would take better care of me than I could myself? And could we attach ourselves to the progress curves of technology and science so that you and I can say, hey, what do we look like in 20 years from now? We don't know, but better.
So to this decision-making process and the creation of this algorithm, there's a whole range of supplements and foods that you're eating in certain quantities and order. How much of that was, let's add garlic and see what happens. Let's take garlic out. Like how did that happen?
We started with the best available science, which, for example, caloric restriction has compelling evidence. I mean, it's not conclusive, but there's compelling evidence. And so we started with caloric restriction as, okay, my diet is going to be 2,000 calories a day. Now, the question is, what do you do with 2,000 calories a day? And so the protocol we have right now is every calorie has had to fight for its life for inclusion. Nothing is randomly chosen. Nothing is just like, hey, this is a good idea. Everything has scientific evidence backing its presence. And so it's tied to phenotypic outcomes. It's tied to clinical markers. Everything has scientific relevance. And that's what we started with. And then we can start with the hypothesis, and then we can look at my data to say, what do the liver enzymes look like? We thought they would look like this with this inclusion. What do they actually look like? And same with my heart and my lungs and when we do imaging or biofluids. And so everything has a endpoint that we can measure to determine whether or not it should be continued to be included or whether we should exclude it.
And how long have you been doing the protocol now?
2 years.
And are you adjusting because you're testing? I should ask you, how often are you doing blood marker testing?
It varies a little bit, but between 30 and 90 days, we'll do a full panel. And
then based on the results of that full panel, have you been finding that you're adjusting the protocol because now you're, I love the term you use, compounding rates of improvement. So things are dynamic. So are you making adjustments, based on your every 90-day blood panels?
Constantly. I would say we're making adjustments, mostly improvements. I'd say the majority of things we've done have been the body has responded as the literature has suggested. So I would say it's not been the case that we are overturning evidence or we're proving evidence wrong. It's that we found evidence of a certain quality, we implement it, and it's done exactly what it said it would do.
And are you finding that this is very specific to you, N of one, or you as a certain phenotype, or like across the species?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, the evidence that we use is not made from me, and we're using evidence that from other people. And so I'd say we've built the protocol on non-me specific data, and we've applied it to me to achieve these outcomes. And then, of course, we've made tweaks here and there, but the principle is on scientific evidence reference as we go about doing this. So, I mean, I'd say it'd be reasonable. We can't make any claims on the mappability to someone else because we just stop at the outer edges. But it's reasonable to think that the things we're doing, like prioritizing sleep, eating vegetables, limiting caloric intake, are things that other humans would also do well with.
Thank you. That was very well said. I was super curious about how specific these things would be to you, and maybe in granular form they are, but in generality, everybody.
Exactly. I mean, it's hard for me. It's hard. It's hard for me not to be tempted to say it's reasonable to consider this to be mappable to other people, because it's not like I've done extensive genetic testing and I'm hyper optimizing for a specific gene expression for this given thing. They're really at the level of caloric intake, of vegetables, of proper macros. You can, of course, there's going to be personalization for a person's objectives and their lifestyle and circumstances. Yes, all those things are true. The basics, however, I think can probably be pretty safely implemented. I mean, getting a good night's sleep is probably a good idea for everybody.
I bet a lot of people on this show, no one would disagree with that.
And I make that obvious statement because that's most of these things are that obvious. And I make that point because we do have this conversation, and a lot of people's knee-jerk reactions to this are, it's like, oh, okay, so you do this, but like, how applicable is this to me? Meanwhile, like if you just, okay, so I'm imagining I'm speaking to myself, and I imagine I'm in the opposite seat. If I were to take a sober assessment of myself, and I've been working on this concept, the self-destructive index. And so let's just say, given my genetic disposition, given the resources I have in life, given where I'm at, like given me as an individual, and given that we've implemented a protocol that's been pretty robust, and I'm able to achieve, for example, a 0.69 on my speed of aging plus these 50 biomarkers plus. Let's just say at this point, I've minimized my self-destructive harm. Like, for example, I'm not drinking excessively, I'm not smoking, I'm getting perfect sleep, etc. So from this the baseline, anything I do that increases my speed of aging, I would attribute to a self-destructive behavior, such as eating too much food, the wrong kind of food, not prioritizing sleep, drinking excessively, etc. And so if I just measure how much self-destructive behavior am I engaging with on a regular basis, right now it's pretty close to zero. Now, if the rest of us look at this and we try to be very sober, and we look at just in the past week, how many times in the past week have we eaten too much food, the wrong kind of food? Have we not prioritized sleep? Have we drank maybe too much, smoked, or like whatever your vices are? Just in the past week, to do an accounting of that and say, what is my load of self-destructive behaviors? That to me is the most significant opportunity for improvement, is just identifying what we've normalized in society as these behaviors that accelerate aging, decay, and decline. But we just basically don't even pay attention to them anymore because we've just normalized it, where they're out of our purview. And then our attention then goes to a debate on whether NR or NMN is better. Meanwhile, the majority of this destruction is happening right in front of our faces, and we're just unwilling to identify it.
Absolutely. And this is the first time I've heard this, the self-destructive index. And this is something that I'm not perfect. I'm pretty disciplined, but I'm not in your category, Bryan. But I'm getting there. But this idea that people will go into the store and they'll buy things like, my favorite bugbear is like the 64-ounce Mountain Dew. Like, what?
Yeah.
You're going to drink that? Yeah. With what outcome are you expecting?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, and
give me some thoughts about that. Why is that happening?
I mean, David, I love your honesty. I mean, I love the confessatorial nature of your honesty. And it's really helpful when we think of ourselves as different versions. So like when, if you do buy that and you do choose to drink that, there's no reason for you to have shame or guilt about that. That's just like a version of you that does this thing. And then now when you and I are talking on this podcast, you're like, I don't really understand why that version of me does that. Like, it's really not a good idea. And so we just acknowledge there's different versions of ourselves that behave different ways in different circumstances. And so if we take a different frame on this and we say, okay, let's imagine people in the 25th century are looking back on the early 21st century right now at our time, and they say, amazing that humans in the early 21st century did blank that changed the trajectory of human history. In the same way we look at the 1600s and 1500s and 1800s at big shifts in their time and place of gigantic changes that were so obvious and someone just poked through. And I would hypothesize that right now it would be our sobering awareness of the self-destructive nature of our dispositions. And it's not just how we treat selves. So it's not just the soda or the chips or the sleep or whatever. I mean, we treat planet Earth in the exact same way. We're helplessly destructive in our biosphere. And it so permeates our society that we've just ignored it and normalized it. And so much so that when someone opts out of self-destructive behavior, like for example, myself, I get ostracized and hate for it because it's not normal, right? It's basically outside of the boundary conditions of what people consider to be quote unquote normal. So therefore I'm eccentric and weird and whatever the case may be. But this is what Blueprint is trying to demonstrate is I had this major problem. I committed this self-destructive behavior. I was helpless in stopping myself from eating too much food and the wrong kind of food. I tried everything to do it. I couldn't do it. And then one day I playfully fired myself and said, you, evening Bryan, who is the destroyer of all things good in my existence, you're done. You no longer have decision authority. And that just naturally grew to the point where I say now is, I just want an algorithm to take care of my health and wellness. I know my own mind. If I give my own mind the smallest of opportunity to make a decision, it's going to make the wrong decision every single time. I just cannot trust myself. I know this. And I think that's true for most of us. I think it's true for most of humanity. And it really is the thing that stands in the way of us becoming what we want individually, collectively, and the future.
We're going to talk about a lot of other things here, but that's probably the most impactful thing that I've heard in a long time. And I love this idea of separating these things. And I'm not going to call you Bad Bryan. I'm going to Bad David. So Bad David got stuck in a blizzard last night and didn't get home until late at night. He was very hungry and he was rattled. And what did he do? He had a bowl of cereal to calm himself down.
Yeah. Again, David, kudos to you. I mean, it really takes courage because, I mean, we all have such strong incentives to put forward this version of ourselves where we seem put together and whatever, but I just love your brutal honesty. What kind of cereal was it?
Oh, it was a great one, man. I get this like chocolate keto crunch stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's super high caloric. I think a bowl of it was maybe like 1,000 calories of like coconut and nuts and everything. I was down for 8.5 hours last night. I was boom. Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, exactly. And like the worst ones are, I think like for people like you and me, it's the foods that have a touch of health and wellness to them. So it's like, okay, this is not Captain Crunch or I don't know what the other ones, Fruity Pebbles or something. So it's not like pure cane sugar, but it's like, hey, we're okay. We don't have the sugar and we're keto friendly and whatever. And it's like, oh, okay. So I'm being bad, but I'm being bad in a good way. So I'll be really, really bad in a good way. Yeah, but I hear you.
Like 15 grams of saturated fat. Boom.
Yeah. I mean, what I found is it's interesting to give that version of David a name. I mean, I'm sure he shows up at certain times, at certain places when you're under certain biochemical states. He's like, hey, David, like, you know what? Hard day, tough day. We feel pretty stressed out. We're not like, why don't we just kind of soothe ourselves with this bowl and maybe 3 or maybe 4. Yeah, but it's a thing. I mean, it's really, really hard to navigate this complexity of being human.
So you've just created a whole other meme for myself, and I love this. This is something I think is just so helpful as we think about 60% of Americans over 65 have a chronic health condition. 30% have 2 or more overlapping chronic health conditions. It's 100% behavior based. Like, And so why are you doing that?
Yeah.
But this is a really interesting, I don't like the word hack, but it's a key. Talk to me a little bit about something we mentioned earlier, this idea of compounding rates of improvement. And how does that come up against something, I think it's called the Hayflick limit, right? Like we can only reproduce ourselves so many times. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, there's a way, there's two ways to think about the future of potential. One is first principles thinking, and the other is zeroth principle thinking. In first principle thinking, let me state it this way: talent is the ability to hit the target no one else can. Genius is the ability to hit the target no one else can see. So if you're a skilled first principles thinker, you can peel back the onion and you can find the known things we have at the base level of all assumptions and piece together a really nice tight string of logic. But that's a very different skill than zeroth principle thinking, which is hitting the target that no one else can see. So, for example, Einstein's special theory of relativity is zeroth principle thinking. And that space-time being relative was something that was always present in our universe. We just discovered it. And then it changed physics. And so then if you say, okay, zeroth principle insights like that there's a Heisenberg-like uncertainty, that DNA propagates itself through this evolutionary mechanism, that Earth is not the center of the universe. Like we've had some pretty big ones that have just changed the way we understand ourselves. And now we say, okay, so with artificial intelligence now a dominant player in our world, that has the skill set of introducing zeroth principle insights at a speed faster than we've ever had before. And so we saw this, for example, when AlphaGo was playing Lee Sedol and beat him in the game of Go. So 19-time world champion AlphaGo plays and stuns the world of Go by playing these genius level moves that had observers remarking that it was as if AlphaGo was from another dimension. And so if we just basically say to ourselves, how much do we think the world is going to change in the coming years and decades? And will this change be fundamental? Will it be like more first principles, or will it be a zeroth principle, or what combination or what ratio of both? And so a long way of answering your question, which is, I'm going to say, I don't think that history is on our side in humans being able to model out limitations with predictions. And that's especially true with artificial intelligence, where it's now breaking down and opening up new areas of genius we never thought existed. And so if we just say, okay, we as humans, what we really care about is improving ourselves at compounded rates so that we're on the same trajectory as technology, what can we become? I don't see any boundary conditions for it. Like why, with what confidence are we going to model out that we have the ability to say that from our vantage point right now, especially when this field just woke up and we're now applying all this advanced intelligence to it? So to me, it's a question of wonder, and I'm more interested in opening the horizon than I am trying to model out the limitations.
Brilliant. Thank you. I just want to talk a little bit granular on Blueprint before we move on to a couple of other things. In terms of grams of protein a day, how much protein are you eating?
110 grams, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. That's great. All right. I was thinking it was much less than that. And you're getting most of that from vegetable, except I think there's some collagen in there and BC, branched chain amino acids.
Yeah, collagen, pea protein, lentils. Yeah, I'm vegan by choice, not by necessity.
Uh-huh.
I'm vegan by choice, excluding the collagen peptides.
Okay.
Which I'm trying to find a vegan version of.
I don't think that's you know more than me, but I think you can get them from algae. They don't smell as good, by the way.
Yeah,
I've tried that.
Yeah, I just got a version of it. I mean, it's just basically an amino acid profile, right? Because whether you're doing the peptides or it's yeah.
let's talk a little bit about there's a couple of pharmaceuticals that you're taking, and I'm curious, and I'm sure you've tested. I'm not sure, but I'm going to ask you if you've tested others that are out there and have failed the testing process. So I see in the current version of Blue Book, you're taking 1,500 milligrams of metformin every day. And that's, did you do an A/B, a before and after with any of the testing on that?
Yeah. We do have data before. We do have data afterwards. And so let me, I guess, expand a little bit on your question. My experience has been that in the field of health and wellness and anti-aging, everybody has a different opinion. I've rarely do I see consensus on anything. And it reminds me of when I became a professional, a pilot. I got my pilot's license, learned how to fly. And even though I'm typed in the airplanes I fly, I always fly with a professional pilot, because when we get in the cockpit, when I compare my skills with their skills, they're just substantially better than me. I may be familiar and understand the game generally, but I'm not as fluid as them because I don't obsess about it. And so the way I've thought through this is there's a lot of limitations of Blueprint in terms of it's only N of 1. We don't have a long duration of time. It's only 2 years. So there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical of what we're doing, and that's totally fine. We also need to make decisions to go forward on this and that, and we do our best with the data we have. And so our general philosophy is our team looked at the evidence. It's debated robustly. Oftentimes there are disagreements. That's expected. It's just done in a productive and constructive way. We decide, and then we just do it, and we measure data and go on. And so that's, I guess, generally speaking, because a lot of people are curious. A lot of people come at Blueprint with a disposition of, they have such a strong opinion that they say, I heard that metformin should not be taken because it blunts gains in exercise. And then in their worldview, the fact that I take metformin discredits all of Blueprint. And it's not taking in this bigger context of nobody agrees about anything, and that's accepted. So what we're trying to do here is make decisions with the data, implement it, and then share the data we do have to try to push the conversation forward. Otherwise, the conversation just stays stuck and everyone disagreeing, and then everyone feeling paralyzed because there's not a path march forward.
Yeah, very well said. I find exactly the same thing. We have all kinds of agreement on gravity, things like physical sciences, but in this, it's just like, it's really hard to discern other than testing with what you're doing. There's you're taking 13 milligrams of rapamycin, but you're only doing it every 2 weeks, which I thought was very interesting. I know some people do 3 milligrams weekly or 6 milligrams weekly, and they'll take like a month off. Any thoughts on how that 13? I haven't heard this protocol before.
Yeah, we're trying to generate. It's basically you're trying to generate a spike in response. So you and then you want to. Then the half-life is, I believe, 66 hours, and so you're wanting to eliminate it entirely from the system. And so with this dose protocol, we've arrived at it by testing my levels 2 hours post taking it on day 6 and day 13. So we're looking at how my body metabolizes rapamycin over that time duration, and if we truly are flushing from my system all of it to hit the next spike. Because that's what you're trying to do is you're not trying to maintain high levels all the time. Spike and get out. And so by then quantifying what this curve looks like has allowed us to titrate and find that response curve.
Oh, brilliant. Very well said. Have there been other pharmaceuticals that you tested? Because there's a lot of stuff out there that have failed the test.
I guess like one quick side conversation, which is funny. You and I freely throw words out like metformin and rapamycin and acarbose because we're in the community together. We understand these words. I recently stumbled and cut open my shin. I needed to get it patched up. And I went into this ER center, and the doctor has me on the table and he said, okay, great. We'll just get this thing sewn up and you'll be on your way. And he said, are you taking any meds? And I thought, oh no. Oh no. What do I say? I mean, like, well, actually, doctor, yes, I'm taking 111 supplements a day, and I'm taking, six different prescriptions. So I was like, okay, let me just kind of dip a toe into this. I said, okay, I take metformin. And he said, the drug they give for diabetics? Yes. Okay, that's weird, but okay, what else? I take dasatinib, the leukemia drug. Yeah, taking that. He's confused. And then what else? Rapamycin, the drug people take for, when they're doing organ transplants to suppress the immune system. He's like, good Lord, son, what is going on? And so I guess it's just a nice refresher that you and I are talking shop in this game, but these ideas are absolutely foreign to those not in the game we're playing. And I need to remind myself all the time on this stuff it's just wacky to people who are not in this game and playing it, what we're doing and the repurposing and the connections they have in their minds. So it's always a good reminder to me of like when we go down the rabbit hole of talking shop on these specific things.
Are you still taking dasatinib?
The protocol we did was 50 milligrams of dasatinib and 500 milligrams of quercetin 3 days in a row, once a month for 6 months.
How'd it go?
As far as we can tell, it went well. We did this our first round, I think 8 months ago. Mm-hmm. And so we've been tracking various things. So far, so good. We're going to do our second round, I think, starting in December, because it's basically 6 months out of every 12 months. Mm-hmm. And we did that based upon a clinical study that had shown favorable results in speed of aging of those patterns.
And so to inform people who aren't as deep into this as we are, my belief is this is a senolytic, and a senolytic is a molecule that removes senescent cells. Senescent cells are sort of these zombie, half-dead cells that cause all kind of havoc around them. And there's a whole senolytic theory of aging out there.
Yeah, that's right. And it has been fun. Are you familiar with J Infinity? What they've been doing with their NAD tests? And
no, tell me.
Well, okay. Well, anyways, I guess we've for fun, several people that are deep in the field of longevity have created their very best guess on aging panels. Like they put together 20 biomarkers that are most predictive of overall health and aging, all that kind of stuff. So occasionally we've done these things for fun with partners that we work with, and they'd put one together of an aging SOS panel. And so we took it, and I think I scored, it was almost perfect. The only one being non-perfect was my vitamin D was like 3% off optimal range. And so I got dinged for that. But otherwise I scored a perfect score. And I think his comment to me was I was the only person ever in the history of his test that had scored a perfect score. And so we do have our internal set of markers. We do try to monitor these closely. The ability to measure these things is not perfect yet. They're not easily accessible. So we really have modest opinions about how we're doing. Like we're trying our very best with the data we have, but it's very experimental and we don't like to make bold claims. It is fun, however, when other people want to pressure test us and we do something like that, it is encouraging. But generally speaking, we try to be pretty modest with what we think we can state confidently we're achieving.
I want to ask you about testing. You're probably the most monitored person I've ever come across. The level of monitoring is really astronomical, but for a regular person. Mm-hmm. So what do you think somebody should be doing? Blood panels, DEXA, what would you recommend? Something that a mortal can do?
Yeah. Recently, we've really gotten into this denuded and paste model offered by True Diagnostic.
Yeah, Ryan Smith. I've had him on the show.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we really enjoyed working with them.
Yep.
We built the Rejuvenation Olympics based upon their test. And so the idea, I was trying to solve two things. One is I do believe I'm potentially the most measured person in human history. And when people looked at that and my protocol, they would make the observation that I'm nuts or eccentric, or they would have a hard time understanding me. And they would use those kind of superlatives, just being like, this guy's whack. And so I started referring to myself as a professional rejuvenation athlete, because when you look at LeBron James and the way he takes care of his body, no one's calling him whack. It's like, he's a professional athlete. His body is his asset, and he's trying to perform well in the court. And I was trying to convey the same idea that if you see what I'm doing is abnormal relative to today's norms, think of me like a professional rejuvenation athlete, as someone trying to push the boundaries. And we wanted to create the Rejuvenation Olympics to invite other people to also have that same identity. Like, hey, let's play this fun game together. Let's play it via points. Like, we can compare. And so we've been using that model. And I like it because even like my mom, even her doing a blood panel, that's a lot of work. You have to go to the doctor, you got to get stuck by a needle, it's uncomfortable. Then you get a bunch of these individual markers of your cholesterol, triglycerides, et cetera. And it's kind of hard to act on those things. Like it's a little difficult versus if you get a finger prick, you do your speed of aging, you get one number for the entirety of your life. At that level of what my mom is going to do, it's just helpful. Like, is she doing that thumbs up or thumbs down? Like, how is she doing generally? Not to say that blood panels are bad. It's just like if my mom needs a data point, like one number to say, how am I doing in life? Thumbs up, thumbs down. It just gives her a nice emotional and psychological check. Like, how are things going? And I think that's really the useful thing for most people is just tell me roughly how I'm doing. I'm not going to optimize to the last degree on everything. And so we like the speed of aging for that because it is responsive to interventions. It's been a fun, it's an easy test to do. So I think it making it easy and low cost for people is really beneficial.
You've really activated the competitiveness in me, Ryan. So I've taken that test. You scored much better than I did, but I need about 6 months, and we'll do it again.
I mean, David, I sincerely hope you beat me. I mean, it would, that's the goal. And that's why I share everything publicly and freely with everyone. I mean, I want people to beat me because then there's other viable options. People can say, well, I've got this option or that option, and which one suits me might better. The objective here is to push the whole field forward. Yeah. And, like, I want to learn from other people too. So like, let's do that. It'll be a fun thing to push the whole field forward. But yeah, I'm glad you feel that emotion. And hopefully it's productive in your life that you do find increased power and strength to do your thing. And then when you do beat me, I can learn from you, which would be a great outcome.
Okay, game on. I want to ask you, just again, in the interest of sort of like simplifying some of the protocol. So like in the weekly things you do for your skin. So I have here, you do total body IPL, you do a total body laser with 2 different wavelengths, you do micropulsed laser and whole body LED. So I didn't even know you could do a total body IPL.
Yeah.
That's quite something.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I'll do something. Is this podcast on video as well as audio?
We can take some of it for video. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll show you. I'll show you the results from yesterday's video laser. Here, you can see my stomach here.
I think that's ouch.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looks like fish scales and like I got run over by a car.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, this is a new laser protocol we have. And so that's why my face is also pretty messed up. My neck is pretty messed up. I mean, we are trying to get my skin age of my entire body skin age to be age 18 as measured by multispectral imaging, autofluorescence, MERS scores. And so the skin is the largest organ in the body. So yes, we do a lot of effort trying to achieve that.
Okay, so now that I know that total body IPL exists, I've never heard of anything like that. This face and neck, I guess. And you have these. So if we can sort of rank these like whole body LED, so that's red light therapy, which is pretty accessible to a lot of people. Of these things, which ones do you feel are impactful?
I guess high level, I think the power laws of everything we're doing. Number one for me, sleep. Is I shared this recently on social media. I now have a 6-week streak going of perfect sleep according to Whoop, and I shared this publicly, and it was like I had some really fun responses. People are like, "OMG, I've been wearing this for years. I've never once got 100%."
Really?
Or
wow.
It's people. Yeah, people really struggle with sleep. And so it was a really fun dialogue with people. And for me, a good night's sleep, the difference between hope and despair is a good night's sleep. And so when I have a good night's sleep, everything feels possible. When I have a discouraging night's sleep, everything feels challenging. And that includes adherence to the protocol and my emotional responses to difficulty in life, all of the above. But I just find that Blueprint is a very challenging situation. But also, being conscious as a human is extraordinarily challenging. And just existing is hard enough, but doing that on a lack of sleep just makes it so much more difficult and painful. And so I'd say the power laws for me, sleep is number one, because sleep leads to diet, which is basically don't eat too much, which is like the next power law. And then 3 is like eat the right stuff. And then everything else just kind of goes, and then exercise, like just the basics. And then of course you can optimize down to senolytic protocols like statinib and other stuff like that. But really it's the basics we all know: sleep, food, and exercise sets the stage for everything else. It gets the brain where it needs to be.
Do you still have trouble sleeping?
No, I basically have mastered it. For a long time, it was like literally a nightmare.
I think I can. Last night was bad because I got stuck in a blizzard and I had a bowl of cereal before bed.
Yeah.
So I think my sleep efficiency was like 89%. But I'm generally like, I take sleep super seriously. It's like a performance activity. So I'm in the like 94, 95%.
So like, let's look at our stats for last night so we can have data. So like I'll share mine. So, okay. So I was, let me look. Yes, I got 3 hours and 5 minutes of REM, 2 hours and 13 minutes of deep, 4 hours of light, and I was awake for 47 minutes.
You beat me.
What were yours?
I'm REM an hour 31, deep 2 hours 8 minutes, awake 1 hour, efficiency 88%.
Yeah.
Total sleep 7 hours 47 minutes.
Yeah, my respiration rate was 13.1, latency 4 minutes.
Well, we're going to get really into this. You beat me there too. Respiration 14.1.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like, it's a professional endeavor, and it's the highest yield activity any of us can do in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing works if you're not sleeping. Nothing. I'm a big fan of Joel Jamieson, and I do his conditioning protocol, and he'll tell you it's not like how hard you work out, all the conditioning. Yeah, that's great, but if you're not sleeping, forget it.
Yeah,
none of this works.
Yeah.
I want to move on to some of your thoughts on the future. So specifically the future of aging. I love this idea of how we as humans have a terrible track record of trying to project, because we think at best we think linearly, and so this sort of outside, as you were saying, the genius target is really sort of outside of the known.
Yeah.
Where are you seeing this idea of aging. I mean, people like Kurzweil are talking about escape velocity. Do you have any thoughts on this stuff?
I do. The way I would try to condense this is say, first, lucky us that we exist. Let's play an infinite game together. Like, I didn't ask to be here. I didn't sign up, as far as I'm aware. I'm just here. So I'm like, all right, what do I do with my conscious self? And then if we say, what is happening in this moment? It seems to me that we are in the process of giving birth to godlike intelligence in the form of AI. Like, in whatever form it's going to evolve into, it's clearly on a path of getting better over some duration of time. So, and it has capacities that far exceed human abilities. So it's not like we're in competition with AI. We're just in a situation where we have this phenomenal form of intelligence that's emergent, and we don't know what it's truly capable of and on what timescales. And so to me, I come back to only one conclusion. Our only job as a species is to not annihilate ourselves. That's it. On humanity's to-do list, we have one job. Don't destroy ourselves. And I just don't know what else we would prioritize right now. I mean, the technology is going to progress on its own. Like, the human motivations that are going to push this thing forward are on their way. They don't need any encouragement from anybody. But the thing that's the most challenging for us is, the human race has there's a lot of evidence on humans being behind destruction and violence. And we arm ourselves with increasingly powerful weapons. And so I wonder, is it possible that we have a radical contemplation of the current state of reality? And this, I go back to Blueprint and I say, I had this very problem with myself. I was hopelessly self-destructive in my own persona. I was incapable of stopping my own violence and my own self-destructive behaviors. I had to literally remove my mind from decision authority, empower my body and science to run my protocol. And I just had to say yes to it. But the only way I was able to achieve peace within myself and stop my own violence and self-destruction was to remove my mind. There's no way my mind is going to change. I'm not going to alter it so much that if I give it ability to do something, it's going to act well. It's not. It is an absolute rascal. And so I really think there's a moment here for us to sober up and say, we may be dancing around little teeny tiny things here and there and this and that, but like, is it really in proportion to the game we're playing right now? Maybe not. And we may need to think much more fundamental ways on how to solve this.
If I understand what you're saying here, the game we're playing right now, you're talking about AI?
That's right. That if you and I, David, go out to space, we're looking back on planet Earth and we say, all right, let's quiet our minds. Let's try to tease out what is going on planet Earth. Like, among all the things we can talk about, what's really happening, I'd say there's three things. One, the emerging capabilities of artificial intelligence is the most important thing happening on planet Earth. Number two is the sustainability of our biosphere is in question. The only home we have. And three, we humans are dangerously at each other's throats, as we always have been. To me, there's just nothing else that matters. And so Blueprint is not about me trying to live to be 200. It's not about vanity. It is about trying to figure out a system where we can continue to exist and increasingly lower our probability of self-destruction and increase the likelihood of being able to create some magnificent future.
That's a heavy lift, man. I'm generally a really optimistic person. I'm less so on those topics. History. But who knows? Maybe we're going to have this real come to Jesus moment. Who knows?
I mean, I concur with your assessment. I mean, it is a reasonable assessment of the data. It's logical what you're saying. And this is why I'm saying that maybe there's an opening here for a contemplation that is substantially different than how we understand the world. I mean, what I'm doing at Blueprint, I've built an algorithm that is taking care of me because I'm powerless to stop my own self-destruction and violence. And I fully acknowledge that I am powerless.
This is brilliant. This is not what I thought we were going to get out of this today, Bryan. And I love when that happens. I love that you've upped the bar, not just for people like me, but you're upping the bar for humanity. And that's great. That's really great. Is there anything you want to leave people with today?
It seems to me that we occupy a special moment in time. If we look back at the history of any other time we could have existed, it's a magical time to exist given the state of technological progress and the possibilities it presents. And I think every generation finds there to be a plentiful number of reasons to despair and to contemplate why would anyone want to bring somebody into this awful world, and to ruminate on those things. I think there is an opportunity here for something like a Gen Zero to arise. Not Gen Z, Gen Zero, as zeroth principal future. And for this Gen Zero to be comprised of people of every age, every ethnicity, every gender, every religion, and for us to lock in and say, we care about working towards a magnificent future. We don't know where it's going. We don't know what it's going to be like. We are willing to divorce ourselves from all human norms, all human customs, all human traditions. We're willing to step out into this unknown and explore the boundaries of conscious existence. And we have this computational intelligence partner to go on this wild ride. And let's refashion ourselves, remove this self-destruction and violence that has plagued us for all this time. And let's remap our future. It's going to take it takes a minute to really understand, to fully breathe into this. I mean, it takes a lot of maneuvering of the mind to even see in yourself your self-destructive tendencies, because the mind is so eager and adept at explaining away all things that threaten its ability to be in control. So just baby step into it. But I think this is our moment for like a Gen Zero-like uprising collection group. And we're not powerless. I think we can actually try to harness this and get ourselves on in the pathway of forward momentum. Just like technology is moving forward with the help of tailwinds, let's us step into the same level of energy and get ourselves in that same trajectory in whatever way it takes us.
I love having really smart people on this show. And this has been an amazing conversation. I feel really privileged. Bryan, thank you for what you're doing. I wanted to talk, wait. We haven't talked about Kernel. You want to tell people what Kernel is? Oh my God.
Yes. So I started Kernel 6 years ago with the objective of building technology that allow every one of us to easily and frequently measure our brains. I mean, Blueprint is enabled because we have measurement and data. Without that, there's nothing. We're just like haphazardly jumping through this and that. If we want to imagine improving ourselves mentally, then having a measurement device. And so we built it successfully. We have some peer-reviewed publications that show it works. We used it showing response to ketamine, also an alcohol dose response, and now we're working on commercialization. But it's to me, it's one of the coolest technological builds of the past decade. It's a phenomenal technological accomplishment, and now we need to solve the go-to-market strategy. So it's been one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. It has enormous potential. It's right there on the edge of before its time. So we need to see if we can pull this off. But it's definitely been an all-consuming endeavor for all of our sakes. I hope we can make it work, because having data on our minds might dramatically improve how we treat ourselves, treat others, and how society builds itself.
Just helping to understand, what is it measuring in my mind?
Think of it like a bike helmet. You put on your head. It takes 1 minute to put on and get it situated. And it's like a pulse oximeter. So people during COVID became familiar with this. If you put this thing on your finger, it uses red light and it looks at your blood oxygenation. It's that for the brain. So we use light. It's it's proven safe. So there's no risk at all. You get more light into your head, into your brain when you walk out in the sun. But it uses light, and we're able to use that light to understand the patterns that are going on in your cortex.
So the how I am thinking, does it measure what I am thinking?
Or, for example, it answered a practical question. So I was a pilot participant in a study looking at ketamine. So ketamine's been used off-label for the treatment of depression. And the way we measure it now is, a person says, okay, I feel depressed. And then they do ketamine, then you report your experience with words. Like, I felt this and I feel that now. And 2 days later, but you're basically relying upon these subjective measures, which are extremely unreliable. And so what we wanted to show is like what actually happens to the brain quantitatively when you take ketamine. So we looked at my brain. I measured my brain daily for 5 days, then during ketamine, and then for 30 days after that. So we got, for the first time in the world, a 30 plus day data recording of what happened to my brain when I took 68 milligrams of intramuscular ketamine. And that really helps baseline in a scientific way. You can answer that with any question. What happens when I take blank drug? Or what happens when I drink alcohol? What happens when I have this kind of diet? What happens when I do this sleep? We basically don't have an easy way to answer these questions now. So our brain kind of just sits there unexamined outside of our introspective things. And to baseline the insanity of that, imagine us trying to take care of our heart through self-introspection. Like, you can't feel arterial plaques. You can't feel high blood pressure. You can't feel, even low HRV. Like, you can't. You need instruments to measure. And so the same thing with our minds. If we're trying to avoid bad things from happening, to address bad things when they do happen, and try to improve ourselves, we need measurement.
I'm trying to imagine. It sounds like an amazing device. And I look forward to. I'm guessing there are only a couple of these things in the world right now.
For now,
they're probably a little pricey, but it sounds like an amazing instrument, because it exactly all these things. They give you, whenever you do anything like this, there's like on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, okay,
yeah, that's right.
How useful is that?
And you and I know. I mean, you and I both measure ourselves well enough now. I mean, my subjective opinion relative to these robust measurements, like, it's totally not even the same game. Like, it's almost impossible to make meaningful progress working on subjective assessment.
As I tell people, feelings are not facts.
Yeah.
They're different. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's confusing for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. We've gone a little over time here. Super appreciate your time and the work that you're doing. And I think my people are going to be very interested in all of this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. And I wish you, David, all the best. Really admire your courage and your honesty of yourself. I sincerely hope you beat me on these metrics.
Oh, I'm coming for you, buddy.
Yeah. I wish you all the best. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye, Bryan.
Bye.
Wow. Bryan Johnson, incredible, one-of-a-kind human being. I couldn't live the way Bryan lives. I don't know if many people can. I don't know if many people should. But that Bryan is living this way matches up with, Bryan's purpose in life. And I think that's great. And I think we can probably learn a lot from what he's doing. And I just want to say, doing these Super Age podcasts is a tremendous, tremendous privilege for me. I feel the people that we've had on the show in the last year, oh my God, they're amazing. I just get so much out of it. And, you guys, if there are other people out there that you think would benefit from listening to the show, forward on the show to them, please. Talking about Bryan, we've had that long discussion about Ozempic. We've been talking about finance. We've been talking about all kinds of stuff that I think is really interesting with a lot of people who really know what they're talking about. So maybe share the show. And hey, if you want to, give us a 5-star review. We like that too. Or, leave us a comment. We're going to get with Just Try This in just a moment after a quick word from our sponsor. Today's show is also brought to you by Inside Tracker. Inside Tracker is the dashboard to your inner health. We talk about this a lot, about metrics, what matters, biomarkers. The thing is, you can't take actions on things that you don't know about. And what you don't know about can hurt you. I use Inside Tracker. I take their ultimate test 4 times a year. I look at their biomarkers. I see what's moving from quarter to quarter, so I can see if I've made changes in my program and my diet. Is there something that I need to adjust? And their food first, supplement second recommendations are great. I always share the results with my doctor, and if there's something we need to go over, we do that. Get a dashboard to your inner health. Go to insidetracker.com/ageist. Save 20% on all their products. Speaking of testing, one of the things that Bryan Johnson does is he runs a ferocious battery of tests on everything imaginable in his body. Every time they change a protocol, they add a supplement, they do anything, there's always a test going on. You don't have to do everything that Bryan does. You can just get Inside Tracker, do their ultimate test. That's what I do every quarter when I change something. So, easier to do than what Bryan's doing. So let's get to Just Try This. This week on Just Try This, I have a really simple, zero-cost suggestion for you. Go out and get some sunlight when you get up in the morning. What'll happen is if you go out, ideally leave your house or wherever you live. If you can't do that, look out of a big window and try and get some sun. Try and get some daylight. What that's going to do is it's going to set up your circadian clock so that you'll be able to go to sleep much easier at night. It's also going to increase your mood. And hey, pro tip, if you smile while all this is going on, it works even better because it's like an epigenetic signal to your cells that everything is okay and you're going to have a good day. So just try this. First thing in the morning, go out and get some sunlight. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We appreciate your time and your attention. It's great to have you with us on this journey. Have a wonderful week. Try and get out there, get some sun, smile, make some new friends, challenge yourself in some new way. We'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week.